When you're thinking about moving to another country, especially a place like Panama, you really need to ask yourself why. I mean, the real reason that you would like to leave the country that you know so well and that you grew up in, leave that behind everything that you've ever considered important to you until now. And especially if you're coming from a country with, a strong first world economy and a strong infrastructure, you really have to consider what you're getting into and why you're doing it. I know so many people who have failed in their expat journey because they had these inflated ideas or these, you almost can't explain it, but these ideas that were maybe too much in dreamland, too much in fairyland, and not realistic. And that can cause you to hate a place. And, I want you to enjoy your life abroad. And the best way to do that is to be prepared. So today on Renegade News, we're going to talk about the worst reasons people are using to use as a reason to retire or move to Panama, or really you can apply these to any expat-friendly country. Welcome back to Renegade News. I'm your host, Glenn Kowalski. Every week on this channel, you'll discover the latest news, strategies, and tactics for breaking free from the system, paying less tax, and living anywhere in the world that you want. So let's just jump right on into it and start talking about some of those reasons. And one of the biggest ones is misinformation. And that's probably the worst thing that I've seen so much of. And it's people making a choice to move to Panama and just jump in with both feet based on out-of-date information that you can find all over the internet right now. There are so many things that are true about Panama, and you'll hear these, and they are true, and they remain true. There's things like there are no hurricanes in Panama. The political system is quite stable here. Panama doesn't print its own currency, so they're using the US dollar, and we don't have an army. It never really snows here. They do get some frost up on top of the highest peak once in a while, but not actual snow. And all of these things are true. The weather is beautiful. We have a gorgeous variety of things to do and see and experience. But most of the websites and blogs and the videos that you're going to find online are created by companies that profit by expats moving to Panama. And that's why it's really literally pays for them to paint Panama in this really feel-good rainbow of colors and make it sound like everything is just perfect. And one of those most common myths, almost a lie, that I hear is that most Panamanians speak English and that you can get by speaking English only. And this is completely wrong. It's better today than it was 14 years ago. There is more English, but trying to get by on a day-to-day basis without knowing any Spanish is going to be really difficult. You're not going to find large numbers of bilingual Panamanians who are working in the shops. And once you get out of the city, you're going to find even less. So if that's a vital requirement to be able to operate only in English, you might want to look at a country like Australia, heaven forbid, instead. Another one is that Panama is cheap. And yes, you can live a better lifestyle for less money in Panama than you can in most places. But the cost of living in Panama, like everywhere else, has grown significantly, and it's definitely going up. It's definitely a lot cheaper compared to many other locations. Like, for example, good luck purchasing an oceanfront condo in Singapore for $250,000 or anywhere in the States or anything at all up in Vancouver, Canada. And you're also going to find things in the service sector like domestic help is still considerably cheap compared to most places. Now, 15 years ago, when I first moved to Panama from Canada, I marveled at just how cheap everything was back then. I mean, the restaurant meals were still cheap. Everything that you ran into was cheap. Here, the prices have gone up significantly. Real estate is still much cheaper than most other places, but your day-to-day costs have been catching up. The average Panamanian does still make less than $1,000 a month, and they've been living there for a long time, so they have a different lifestyle than they used to. So if we come to Panama with North American expectations, you're going to find that it's really not as affordable as you thought. It's easy to think, well, the average salary is $1,000 a month. Obviously, I can live with that. But if you're used to living on North American standards, you're not going to be able to live on that $1,000 a month here either. So we really do have to make some adjustments in how we live. So just keep that in mind. You really don't want to move to retirement to expect this much expensive lifestyle, but still be able to enjoy the luxury and the lifestyle that gives you the comforts of home. And it's definitely a mistake to do that. Now, the other thing that you have to remember is that everything's going to be the same and it's just going to be cheaper with better weather, but everything else in your life is going to be the same and isn't going to change. And that's really the worst reason to come here if you don't plan on adapting to the culture and the way of life. You need that tolerance and you need to adapt, and don't expect that same level of service or the same attitudes that you get in your home country. The Panamanian philosophy is probably a lot different from yours. The education system's different, and the things that Panamanians value are also going to be different from what you value as well. So you have to yield and change to their culture. A lot of people come here expecting to change the Panamanians to yield to theirs, which is completely the wrong attitude to have. Also, you need to consider what you plan on doing when you move here. If you like nature and beaches and then all of those hobbies, you're going to love it. You're going to be absolutely fine and it's going to keep you occupied. And if you're here for a wonderful culture of people and the gorgeous scenery and the spectacular food, the awesome Panamanian people, I just love them, then you're going to really enjoy it. However, if you're looking for some of the other cultural things that you get in Europe and in New York, you could find that lacking. It's a different style of clubs. There is theater here. It'll all be in Spanish, but it's a very different type of culture than if you're looking at those bigger, more modern places. The next reason not to move to Panama is if you're just completely unhappy with your life now and you think that moving by itself is going to fix everything. And that's one of the biggest reasons I see that people are leaving their home country. They're just unhappy. And a lot of people who are unhappy there tend to think that just moving is going to fix whatever is making them unhappy. And most of the time it will not. Obviously, it depends on what you're unhappy about, but problems do tend to follow you. So if you're thinking about moving to Panama, you have to analyze where you are in your life and what you're looking for and make that right personal decision, because it is a big move, especially for people who have lived their entire lives in the United States. Living in another country is going to be very different from living in the US. And in terms of language, in terms of conveniences you're used to, traditions, customs, driving is crazy in Panama. It's definitely a different experience than you're used to. The shopping is going to be different, although for the most part, those kind of things are fairly similar. But many things are going to be different for you, and you need to expect that. And that could be what makes you happy, but don't expect those things alone to change a general happiness inside, because you're going to end up blaming Panama for your unhappiness instead of blaming the US or Canada like you might right now. You know, people come to Panama thinking that moving here is going to fix their marriage and provide a fresh start, but it's not always that easy, and you have to be very open-minded and you have to be willing to move forward. The local word for this is adelante, and you just have to move yourself forward. And just remember, there's problems everywhere, and there's going to be some here too, but it is a beautiful place to get through them. I don't want to call it a bad reason, but another thing to keep in mind is a lot of people move to Panama and to Central America to meet someone. And that's okay. But there's this thing that happens where, you know, a guy meets a girl on his vacation and then he winds up marrying her without really knowing her and actually living in the place. And he only then realizes that things weren't quite as he dreamt because of the other reasons we're talking about in this video. And so I think that could be a bad reason to come to Panama, is just that you're lonely and you want to meet somebody. And because you see on a lot of dating websites, you see a lot of information about a 50s and 60 and 70-year-old men moving to Panama and meeting 20 or 30-year-old brides. It does happen, but I don't recommend you come here just to get a bride. There are beautiful people here. There's wonderful people here. And you may very well find that perfect person to become a bride. And I know plenty of people who have done that. And you can live this good life here. But don't make it the main reason for coming here, because you're going to end up getting into a relationship that keeps you trapped, and all of the negatives that happen with doing that. It's one thing to find a beautiful 20-year-old girl when you're in your 70s. It's another thing when you end up paying for the families and running into somebody who doesn't have your best interests at heart. So one of the worst reasons to move to Panama, and one of the worst things you can do with your attitude, is to think just because you're coming in with money that Panama is going to owe you something, and because you're going to be spending your money there, that people should bend to your will and they somehow owe you because you're coming in and investing in a bunch of real estate. We get a lot of fat cat show off gringos coming down here, and they're not popular with Panamanians. They're not popular with other expats. They're not popular with people who already live here. So if you're expecting the culture to be like what you're used to in America, and this theme keeps coming up and over again, it's not. It's going to be different. And one of the things that drives people crazy here is that there is that difference in culture. They call it here in Panama, they call it the manana culture. So when you ask for something, when something's going to happen, when am I going to get that picture hung? When am I going to get that furniture installed? The answer tends to be mañana, which literally means tomorrow. And when you first come here, that's what you think it's going to mean, but it doesn't. In Panama, mañana means at some point in the future, but definitely not today. And a lot of gringos come here and it drives them absolutely nuts unless they can learn to live with that. So if you come here with that American attitude that everything needs to happen now and everything needs to happen on time and precisely at the moment you say it has to happen, then that's going to be seen as an intense way to react with the culture, and people really aren't going to like it. So if you need that American style way of doing things, you're going to have a big headache moving to Panama. And people aren't going to change to move around you. You have to accept how it is or find someplace else to go. There's this huge cultural difference and you have to be aware of it. That's one of the beautiful things about Panama is that culture. If we wanted to have the US and Canadian culture, we would have stayed in the US or Canada. But you also have to know that sometimes that change in culture isn't the greatest thing, and you have to get used to it. If you can accept it, you'll love it here. If you can't, you're gonna go crazy. But look, when you're looking at different places to invest in, and you're choosing countries for that, and you're looking for a second home or to start a business, that's really only one of the things that you're gonna need to set up in your life over the next few years if you wanna break free from the system that you're living in now and change your life. So be sure to click the subscribe button so you're always kept up to date on the latest strategies on finding more personal, financial, and location independence in this unfree world. And while you're here, go to the video that you see on your screen right now, and it's going to give you more information on the best places to live, some strategies for internationalization and second passports, second residencies, those type of topics. We're also going to talk about Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and so much more. I'm Glenn Kowalski from Renegade News, and I'll see you over there.